Welcome to Encounter Wargaming. I'm Jay, and today we're going to be taking a trip back to the past once more with the further look at the second edition books. I've got today the Codex Army Lists for you guys and the Battle for Armageddon Scenarios. So let's check them out. Alright, so today we're going to be going through these two little tiny books here for second edition Warhammer 40,000. I know I told you guys that I'd be doing the War Gear cards with you today, but I've decided that I'm going to do these two last little books because the next thing we have after these is the expansion for the second edition of Warhammer 40,000. And so I'm going to show you the expansion and all the cards and templates and, you know, psychic cards and all that in its own video. I think it'd be better to do it that way, especially because neither one of these books are very big, and so they don't warrant a video on their own, but at the same time, both of them put together is going to make a nice video for you guys. So we're just going to do these two today. So we've got the Codex Army Lists. So because, as I say, second edition was sort of a massive redo from Rogue Trader, they released every army in the game in this little book that came in the starter set with everything else. Much like they've done now with 8th edition, how they released everything in an index. Only, as you can see, it's much smaller than any of the indexes are. Basically because this is literally just army lists. There's not really any special rules or anything listed in here. That's all listed in the other books that I showed you already. And then this one here is basically your scenarios. So it's actually the Battle for Armageddon, which is awesome. That's where they sort of started you off with second edition, was the Space Marines versus the Orcs. Obviously in third they expanded the Armageddon Wars a lot more and introduced Steel Legion and all that, but in second edition the starter set was the Orcs versus the Blood Angels, which was really interesting. So this is basically your core scenarios for Warhammer 40,000 second edition. So without further ado, let's pull this one aside for now and bust into this one first, because this is probably the more fun one. So actually I should show here, we've got Jervis Johnson and Andy Chambers as the writers. So now we're seeing Andy Chambers have a larger role in this as well. Jervis Johnson is now weighing in on the system. So here we go. Now, this is basically just telling you what all the different categories are for your models. So we've got characters, we've got squads, we've got support, and then of course we've got allies. And even though this is explained in the rule book, it's basically just telling you what the abbreviations mean. And then we've got all the lists here. So basically we've got Space Marines, Imperial Guard, Imperial Agents, interesting, which would be like assassins and inquisitors and all that kind of stuff. Squats, which they did incorporate into second edition, probably because in Rogue Trader squats were a large thing, and again this is just a jump from Rogue Trader, so they wanted people to still be able to use their collections, but squats actually never got a codex in this edition, so this is literally the end of squats. Then we've got Orcs, Eldar, Chaos, Tyranids, and Genestealer, which they separate in two different categories. I guess Chaos, they've included Demons and Chaos Space Marines in the same army, as they pretty much always were. Moving on. Alright, so as you can see, this is the way the army lists were laid out in second edition. Like I say, it doesn't explain any of their rules here, it just gives you a little blurb as to what exactly they are, and then it gives you their characteristics as well as their points costs. Now the War Gear section is where you added up all your points for your weapons. So here they're not telling you what weapons they come with or anything like that. All that is in the codexes, or in this case it's in the rule book. The War Gear book I showed you guys, as well as the Codex Imperialis, explain the rules for the weapons, what everybody carries, what their special rules are. It's all in the Codex Imperialis. And the rules for all the weapons is in the War Gear book. So you got to see, back then they really supplemented everything. Everything was like in its own category, and it just prevented them from having to print things multiple times over. You'll notice as you get into 3rd and 4th edition that there's a lot of refer to blah 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 page in this book. Again, just giving them reason not to reprint everything 1,000 times. which actually makes it more complicated when you're actually playing to be able to look things up, because you got to look in this supplement or that supplement or over here or over there, rather than now where you have a data slate and that just tells you everything you need to know for the unit. The difference is, with the data slates, they have to keep reprinting the same special rules over and over again, unless it's an army-wide special rule. But certain things obviously are the same from data slate to data slate, even from army to army. They just give them different names and stuff like that just for flavor. But, you know, they obviously have to reprint the same descriptions over and over, or at least something similar. So in this edition, they weren't doing that. They were just giving you the basic profiles, which actually, strangely enough, if you were just looking up the profiles, this is what you wanted to look at. If you wanted to look for the weapons, you looked in the War Gear book. If you wanted their special rules, you looked in the Codex Imperialis. But anyway, so we can see here the army composition rules. Now, this is before the force organization chart. So in 3rd edition, they introduced the force organization chart, which was a massive change to the way you built your armies. Back here in 2nd edition, it was percentages. So you were allowed up to 50% characters, 25%, at least 25% squads. So 25 or more or less your compulsory troop choices. And then your support could be up to 50% of your army. And then, of course, you had allies. In this case, Space Marines may ally with Imperial Agents, Imperial Guards, Squads, and Eldar, which is interesting. And again, I think allies were probably maximum 25% of your points cost. So there was a lot more math, a lot more trying to figure out fractions and stuff like that. So, but basically what that means is, in a 2,000 point list, you have to have at least 500 points of squads, and then you could have up to 1,000 points of support, or up to 1,000 points of characters. Of course, you can't do all three, but well, you can, but you know what I mean. You can't have 2,500 points worth of stuff in a 2,000 point list, right? Anyway, making sense? Cool. Moving on. So as we're seeing here, the characteristics are more or less the same as they've always been. The difference being, of course, now, like obviously, Space Marine characters don't have a strength and toughness of 5. They've kept strength and toughness 4. It's your basic stats. But again, as I explained to you, the champion hero, mighty hero system, where literally like it goes up the same increments regardless of what army it is. The basic profile being a Space Marine, and then your champion goes up in weapon skill, ballistic skill, and initiative. Same here, hero goes up 1 more in weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, wounds, initiative, and attacks, which is interesting. And then mighty hero up 1 more increment in all those categories. So we can see also with the librarians, there's actually 4 different levels, but that's simply because your basic librarian is a toughness 5 Space Marine, which is definitely interesting. And then everybody moves up from there. And of course there were Psychic Mastery levels, much like there was in 6th and 7th when they brought back the Psychic phase, because in this edition there was a Psychic phase, but there wasn't in every edition after that, until we get to 6th and 7th, when they actually reintroduced the Psychic phase. So we're going through here. I mean, this is pretty much your standard stuff that you expect to see nowadays. We have commanders, we have captains, standard, apothecary, chaplain, tech marines, librarians, veteran sergeant, which is interesting because you had your basic sergeant, which came in your tactical squad. But then to upgrade to a veteran sergeant, you actually had to purchase that as one of your characters, which counted towards that max 50%. So even though they joined the unit, again, there was no, I don't think there was any independent character rules like there was in later editions, like from 3rd onward. But you did have to take it out of that category. It didn't count towards your compulsory category. It takes away from your character category because it's a veteran. You could do the same thing with orcs. You had the knobs. With Chaos, you had aspiring champions, and so you actually purchased them as a separate entry, which made it interesting for Chaos because you could actually have an entire Power Armor Chaos Space Marine unit with like a purchased Terminator character leading them, which is made for a lot of flavor. Anyway, as we're seeing here, your squads, Terminators, Tacticals, Assault Squads, and Scouts, as well as Devastator Squads. Interesting that Devastator Squads count towards your squad total, not your support total. That's definitely interesting. So that means theoretically you could have a whole army of Terminators, or an entire army of Devastators, or an entire army of Scouts, which totally makes perfect sense. And in fact, nowadays you can do that again, now that they've done the detachment situation, except troops having the advantage, so Devastators aren't going to be holding units in the current edition. Holding objectives in the current edition. Not scoring units, that's what I meant to say. And then your support weapons here, which I believe would basically be your, Thunderfires, Tarantulas, and things like that. Yeah, it's just giving a stat line for a Servitor, because of course they man the support weapons. But back in this edition, we actually did have Tarantulas and stuff like that, Thud Guns, and etc., etc. And then we've got vehicles. Again, it's just giving you a Space Marine stat line, because the vehicle stats, it says here, see data slate. I'll show you that when I show you guys the war gear cards and stuff like that in the next video. But every vehicle has a data fax, I believe they actually called it in this edition, not a data slate. And that outlined all the weapons, points, as well as the locations, as I was explaining to you before in the past video, how you rolled for location, and then you rolled on a separate table for each location, so depending on where you hit. In fact, different locations of the vehicles had different armor values, if I remember correctly. I could be mistaken, but I think that was the case. And so it really matters what part of the vehicle you actually hit, and then what you did to that part of the vehicle. In third, they decreased it to a general damage table that applied to every vehicle in the game, which streamlined things quite a bit. But now, of course, they've streamlined it even more, because there is no damage tables and stuff like that anymore. Vehicles operate just like any other model, with toughness and wounds and such. So there you go with the war gear list. So this is your point totals for all of the weapons, and there you go with the support weapons. We've got mole mortars, multi-lasers, rapier laser destroyers, tarantulas, and thud guns. And all come equipped with a targeter. That's pretty cool. Vehicles, we got bikes, bike, and sidecar. That's interesting, so that's an attack bike. Dreadnoughts, land raiders, land speeders, predators, and rhinos. So moving on to the Imperial Guard. Got a colonel, that's pretty cool, as your mighty hero. You got commissars, tech priest engine seers, cool. So that's there you go. Command squads, veteran sergeants, again purchased as characters, which you would put into your tactical squads. It's interesting that they call them tactical squads rather than infantry platoons. So it's Imperial Guard Tactical Squad. Again, the same stat line we're used to seeing on an Imperial Guardsman. Support squads, so that will be, I imagine, your heavy squads or your special weapon squads. You got assault squads. Weird. I didn't know there was such a thing. Las pistols and chainswords. Huh. That must be something they took out, because I have never seen an Imperial Guard unit with just close combat weapons. That's really weird. Unlike the Space Marine Assault Squads, which take jump packs, I don't think these guys can take jump packs. No, definitely not. Sergeant may be upgraded to a champion at plus 10 points. Okay, cool. Penal Legion. That's interesting. You have to have at least a Tech Priest Engine Seer in your army to be able to use Penal Legion. Each armed with a las gun and flak armor. The entire squad may be equipped with Friends on. Ooh. That's cool. Rough Riders, excellent. Veterans, now, they've got Auxilia listed here. So that's a new category that we didn't see in the other ones, because it's not support. So, So you have veteran squads, Ogryn squads, and Rattling squads. That's pretty cool. Each command section you have taken allows you to pick one squad from this section. Okay. So for each command squad you take, you can grab an Auxilia squad. Cool. That's neat. That's a cool way to organize it. And then support, of course, only 50% of your army can be support. That is including vehicles. So same support weapons as the Space Marines, again, manned by servitors. And I find it interesting that the vehicles listed in the Imperial Guard are bikes, land raiders, land speeders. Leman Russ is added, Predator, Rhino, and Sentinel. So the specific Imperial Guard ones being the Leman Russ and the Sentinel. But it's interesting that you purchase a Rhino or a land speeder or a land raider or even a Space Marine bike, which is really strange. Because I don't think Imperial Guard had bikes with guardsmen riding them. I know the squats did, but I don't think Imperial Guardsmen did. So it's interesting that you don't have to put that towards your allies section, you put it towards your support section. That I had forgotten and didn't realize. It's just weird how that works. So armor, we've got the standard fields we're used to seeing. Displacer field obviously doesn't currently exist, but that's more or less the same as a storm shield. Refractor field 5 up, conversion field 4 up, and a displacer field 3 up. Cool. Just skimming through all the stuff here. I mean, yeah, you've clearly got all your standard weapons. Heavy plasma gun you can't take with Imperial Guard anymore. That's interesting. It's basically a plasma can, what we call a plasma cannon nowadays. And then it's awesome how they have so many different types of grenades in this edition. Because now grenades are almost not even a part of the game. I mean, they're actually a shooting weapon in 8th, which is really weird. Melt bombs are gone completely. And of course, there's no such thing as blind grenades or photon grenades or plasma grenades anymore. Flamer, grenade launcher, yeah. So we've got kind of your standard stuff there. There you go, that's the Imperial Guard from 2nd edition. Now, here's the agents list. This is interesting. Oh, they have sisters included in this. I didn't realize that. That's pretty cool. Because I didn't think they'd come out with the sisters until they actually got their own book. But this is interesting, because we do have the Arbite line included in here, which is pretty neat. So you could actually take this as your army. Oh, maybe not. Space Marines and Imperial Guard armies can spend up to a quarter, 25% of their points on Imperial agents. This point spent count against the support location of your army's points value. Ooh, okay. So they're not really allies. So if you took Eldar in your Space Marine list, you'd be counting them as the allies category, whereas if you take Imperial agents, you're counting them as the support category, much like your vehicles and support weapons. That's interesting. So literally I could take an Imperial Guard army, and I can spend up to 25% of my points on Imperial agents, on Space Marine tanks, and things like that without actually taking Space Marine squads, which is pretty cool, I guess. But I don't see why you wouldn't be able to take this as an army on its own, other than the fact that it doesn't give composition rules here like it did with the other lists. It's definitely interesting. So anyway, as we see here in the characters section, we've got a judge first, which is pretty cool, and as well as an Arbite champion, so those are your Arbite leaders. And then we've got Mechanicus characters. We got the Tech Priest Magos, as well as the Engine Seers. Because the Engine Seers in the Imperial Guard part were up to 2 Tech Priest Engine Seers. Okay, so they were counted towards the category, the characters section. But if you wanted to max out your characters on other things, I suppose you could take the Tech Priest Engine Seer as support rather than as characters. It's pretty interesting. And then you've got the Ministorum, which is nice, because you've got Canoness, Sister Superior, Preachers, and Confessors. Cool. And then you got Primaris Psychers. Here you go, Adeptus Astra Telepathica Prime Psycher. So Adeptus Psychers, Psycher Champions, Master Psychers, and Psycher Lords. So much like the Space Marine Librarian, there's 4 mastery levels, and you have the profiles increasing from there, of course starting as a human, except with Toughness 4 and Initiative 4. Weird how that works, eh? So they really changed the way the characteristics interact with each other when it hit 3rd, I suppose. Officio Assassinorum, so there you go, you've just got an assassin. I guess they hadn't come out with the houses yet, yeah, they're assassin houses, right? Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. The Vindicare and the Ebersor and stuff like that. I guess an assassin is just an assassin at this. And look at that. Weapon skill, ballistic skill 8. Insane. Initiative 8. Wow. Strength 5 and toughness 5. That is insane. They're freaking superheroes. Okay, Inquisitors. Neat. Inquisitor, Master Inquisitor, and an Inquisitor Lord. Again, going up in the same increments. Starting with Inquisitor being Space Marine. Strength 4, Toughness 4. Oh no, I guess the Imperial Guard characters. Yeah, so we're seeing Arbite Champion with Strength 3, Toughness 3, but a Judge at Strength 5, Toughness 5. Interesting. The Veteran Sister has a Toughness of 4, and the Canoness has a Toughness of 5. That's interesting. Just trying to compare because, you know, you consider a Space Marine to have a Toughness of 4, whereas a human has a Toughness of 3. So there you go, your sorority squads, all your Battle Sisters have Toughness 4, which is insane. And of course we got the Grey Knight Terminator squads, because the Grey Knights, they hadn't expanded into a whole army yet. They were just Terminators in this edition. There were no other. Electro Priests I didn't think actually existed back then, but that's pretty cool. Strength 8. Wow. And Servitors are Toughness 4. That's crazy. Adeptus Mechanicus may include any of the vehicles in the vehicles section of the Imperial Agents Wargear list. See the relevant data facts. The points values includes Servitor crew. So let's move on to the next page and see what kind of vehicles they could actually access. Because apparently they're manned by Servitors, not by Space Marines or Guardsmen. So the vehicles, they have all the same vehicles as the Space Marines and the Imperial Guard got access to. Except it seems that they're manned by Servitors. That's really weird. Huh. I'm gonna have to do further research on that, but that's the way it appears, because in that last page they gave you a Servitor stat line rather than a Space Marine stat line. I'm just gonna flip back to the Imperial Guard section for a second, because in the vehicles, yeah, it gives you a Guardsman stat line. So if you purchased a Predator for your Imperial Guard army, would it be manned by Guardsmen rather than Space Marines? Strange. Would explain why Space Marines don't get access to Leman Russes or bikes. Yeah, no, it's just your standard what we expect to see as Space Marine vehicles. And I guess the Imperial Guard can't access the sidecar. In fact, now that I've seen it, I think the Imperial Guard did have land speeders back then. There was human manned land speeders and Space Marine manned land speeders. Yet to see a Servitor manned one, though. That's kind of crazy. And the Arbites have a separate war gear list. That's definitely interesting. Power Sword, Power Maul, and Suppression Shield. Yeah. Bolt Gun, Shotgun. Cool. Your armor. Basic weapons. All the basic weapons we're used to seeing. Assault weapons. Power Glove. I love how they called Power Fist Power Glove back then. They probably changed it to Power Fist because, as I mentioned in past video, Nintendo came out with a Power Glove, which was a really strange controller that you could fit over your hand. And I guess there might have been some copyright issues there, so whatever, it is what it is. But then again, the names of these things change slowly over time. Nowadays, they're definitely changing a lot of the names of things as proven for copyright issues, because certain things like elf, for example, is not a word you can copyright because it's sort of public domain at this point, whereas they've now changed it to like Eldari and stuff like that, which basically their own word, which they can copyright because they invented this stupid word. We don't have Eldar anymore, we have Eldari. But anyway, moving on to the squats. Yep, similar composition. Half your army can be characters, at least a quarter must be squads, and up to half of your points can be support, and squats may ally with Space Marines, Imperial Guard, or Eldar. Which is weird, because you'd think squats wouldn't like Eldar much, but I guess they're all, you know, sort of your good guy armies versus your alien bad guy armies. So, very similar situation to the Imperial armies we've seen. We have a Warlord, a Battle Standard, Hearthguard, which are more or less like your veterans or your command squad, I suppose. Engineer Guildmasters, so those would be your sort of, you know, Tech Marine type dudes. Ancestor Lord, which is interesting. If I remember correctly, Ancestors are Psychers, at least they were in Rogue Trader. Yep, they have psychic powers at a cost of plus 25 points per psychic level, so you can give him psychic levels. That's pretty cool. So your basic squat warriors, again we've got your basic warrior squad, which would be your tactical squad, and attack squad, which I guess would be your assault squad sort of equivalent. Yep, they're armed with bolt, pistol, and axe, whereas the other guys are armed with a las gun, las pistol, frag, and crack grenades. Interesting. And your Thunderer squads, armed with a las gun, las pistol, frag, and crack grenades. Any number of models may be equipped with additional special or heavy weapons. Any number. Ooh, so that's basically your Devastator squads, right? You could have a whole army of whole unit of special weapons, or a whole unit of heavy weapons. Ugh, excuse my yawn. Your support, you've got your weapon teams. Warriors additional, see war gear section. So your support weapons, which yeah, your standard mole mortars, multi-lasers, rapier laser destroyers, tarantulas, and thud guns. Bike squads, there you go. So you got your squat bikers, which were a fan favorite still to this day. Heavy weapon bike. So I guess it's the same as your attack bike kind of situation. And vehicles, you've got they just have access to the Land Raider and the Rhino. Because I recall seeing squats riding around in rhinos, which I found really interesting. I guess they, I think the fluff there is that they actually gave the STC to the Imperium because they had lost, of course, their knowledge over time, and it's my understanding that the squats work very closely with the Adeptus Mechanicus, and of course gave the Imperium a lot of the technology that they have, because the squats, being technically savvy, held on to a lot of the technology from the Dark Age or Golden Age, depending on how you want to call it, of technology. So, moving on, your war gear list looks pretty standard, just like the others. They have access to all the same human weapons. I don't see anything out of the ordinary, other than the fact that they have less options as far as vehicles. Other than that, it looks like they have access to all the same things that the Space Marines and the Imperial Guard have. And that is the squats. Moving on to the orcs. Again, same composition, except this time they've included freebooters as a category. That's interesting. So you've got your clans, right? So each of your mobs can belong to a different clan, and then freebooters being pirates. I guess they categorize them as a separate sort of auxilia sort of situation where you're bringing it in, and as usual, you have to have at least a quarter of your army in basic mobs, which would be your squads, and up to 50% of the others. And orcs may ally with Chaos, and may also ally with Imperial Guard if there is at least one Blood Axe mob in the army. That's cool. I do remember that because I personally purchased a squad of Blood Axe orcs, just so I could have a Leman Russ in my army back in 2nd edition. Because, yeah, Leman Russes were king in this edition, by far. You would think Land Raiders would be, but nobody actually had one, because strangely enough they discontinued the model, I think, by the time I started playing, because I've never seen one of the old original Rogue Trader Land Raiders in person. I've only ever seen them in photos. And then in 3rd edition they came out with the current Land Raider kit, which again has been modified multiple times since then, but at the time it was the largest plastic model kit they had ever produced. And then I think it stayed the largest plastic model kit they produced until they came out with the Baneblade in 4th 4th/5th edition when Apocalypse first came out, which I remember at the time just like blew Games Workshop's plastic budget out the window that year. Since then, they've of course given us all kinds of plastic super heavies. We got the Stompa, we got the Lord of Skulls, we got now Imperial Knights and things like that. They just keep getting them bigger and badder. It's crazy. But back then, literally the largest model you had on the table was your Land Raider. Anyway, we're looking at orcs. Again, your standard sort of situation with the mighty heroes, battle standards. So you got a war boss, of course, leading your army. Interesting, he's only toughness 5, whereas the Space Marine characters were toughness 6. That I find really strange. Battle standard is your standard orc. Big boss is toughness 5. Huh. Weird. And a freebooter captain. This looks like the equivalent stat line of a big boss, just a different category. Same point value. Knobs, again, purchased as characters, part of your character section and then attached to your units. Mechaniac, that would be your mech boy. That's what they used to call them, like a maniac, but they're mechaniacs. Pain boys, runt herds, and weird boys, and strange that you can only have 0-1 of each of them in your army. That's kind of, huh. Because I had one of each in my original army. In fact, I still have my old second ed weird boy, which I do bring into games of 8th edition once in a while. I just put him on a 40mm base. I changed him up, repainted him, and stuff like that. So your mobs, again, we've got them divided by clan. So they actually have special rules based on their clan. Otherwise, they're basically just your standard orc profile. Same point cost, 12 points a guy all the way up, except for Bad Moods, which are 10 points a model. That's interesting. I guess that's to represent the fact that they have more money and so can hire more guys and more weapons and stuff like that. It's interesting that your knobs mob, the knobs are only 1 point more than an orc and have way better characteristics. Actually, now looking at it, it's not that much better. They only have higher weapon skill, ballistic skill, and initiative. Oh, and leadership. No 2 wounds, though. That must have been a 3rd edition thing that they introduced. Huh. Because I remember knobs having 2 wounds all the way from back in the day, but I guess they didn't in this edition. Gretchen mob, Snotling herds, Storm boys, cool, and Mad boys, Mad mob, Mad boys. Those are really cool. I still have a large unit of Mad boys, and they're so funny. The models are amazing. They're basically just orcs that have lost their mind, and they had like this weird table that you rolled on to see what they did every turn, because they were like impossible to control. It just added some wicked cool flavor, and I wish they'd bring stuff like that back to the game. But as I've said in past videos, it seems Games Workshop is trying to make Warhammer 40,000 more and more serious all the time. But then they do kind of insert the odd comic relief here and there. So it's kind of weird how things have gotten less silly in many ways, but more silly in other ways. Anyways, freebooters, you've got pirate boys. So again, same point cost and stat line as a standard orc, but again, not part of a clan. They are orc pirates. And under the freebooter section, we have sort of feral orcs as well, which is interesting. So flash gits being your boys with like crazy ass high-tech weapons, wild boys being your feral orcs. So they are orcs with a 6-up armor save. No, all orcs have a 6-up save, it looks like, in this category with flak armor. What makes these guys different? Any model may have a shield, an extra sword or axe, a double-handed weapon, or a bow. Cool. So basically that gives you a way to bring your orc archers from fantasy over to your Warhammer 40,000 army. This is something I remember. They could have Ogrins. I remember in the Orc Codex in 2nd edition they allowed you to take Ogrins, which is pretty cool. As sort of guns for hire. Because Ogrins, of course, are humans in a way. They're abhumans, but Ogryn societies are much more barbaric than normal human societies, and of course they're a lot more feral, and they don't necessarily always work for the Imperium, especially because They are extremely stupid, and they will basically follow orders that if anybody tells them anything, they just kind of mindlessly follow it. And so I guess for the right price, and if you persuade them enough, they will join your orc army, which is neat. Now I'm interested to see, I see here a Weird Boy Warp Head. Now if I remember correctly, the Warp Head was like sort of your level 4. It's a level 3, okay. And 4 to 20 Mad Boys. Huh. So it's a unit with a Weird Boy leading Mad Boys. Wow, that's really strange. I didn't even know that existed. Run-Turd Artillery, so there you go. Those are your orc artillery weapons, which we remember and love from back in the day. What is now, you know, mech guns and big guns, I guess. And yes, you had to have a Run-Turd sort of gathering the grots that operated the weapons. Don't know if that synergy exists between Run-Turds and mech guns and things these days. I know for a fact that the Run-Turds obviously help the grot units, and you can't have things like snotlings and stuff anymore, which obviously you could have here. And as I was explaining to you before in the past video about the shock attack gun, you actually had to purchase snotling bases to be able to fire out of the shock attack gun. If you ran out of bases, you ran out of ammo, basically. And then looking through the war gear list, we've basically got your standard weapons. Back then, orcs used imperial weapons. I mean, they had bolt pistols and axes, chain swords. Here you go, chain sword, power axe, power fist. All the standard stuff. Conversion field, displacer field, refractor field. Except they called Carapace Armory heavy armor, as they continued to do in later editions. And we've got flamers, melt guns, plasma guns, autocannons, heavy bolters, las cannons, missile launchers, multi-meltas, heavy plasma gun, and heavy stubbers. So yep. Character models can purchase a warboard to ride on. That's pretty cool. And then frag, crack, and melt the stick bombs, same as grenades. For their vehicles, we have a battle wagon, dreadnought, gob, smasher. Not entirely sure what that is. I'm going to have to look through my data faxes to see what that is. Knobs, bikes, scorches, tin boys, which is your orc robots, more or less. It's like your imperial robots. You could have tin boys, which are your orc robots, which we saw in the last video. I was confused that they looked very much like Space Marines. I was like, why are these Space Marine robots in there? But it turns out that the orc robots looked like Space Marines because I think they were trying to mimic Space Marine appearance when they built the robots, which I find very strange for orcs. But I guess back in this edition, especially, the orcs tried to sort of mimic humanity. I mean, they still kind of do in a way, because they speak low Gothic and they loot everything and try and copy other races' technologies. But they're not, you know, 100% mimicking humans. They are very orky in their own right, whereas the orcs in this edition were almost more refined and less barbaric. I mean, they're pretty barbaric, but compared to the way we look at orcs nowadays, which are very junky and ragtag, I guess is the right word nowadays. They were a little more refined in this edition. More proper clothing and armor, not just like random armor plates strapped to them. They actually had molded, you know, shoulder pads and things like that. And so far, I guess, in this artillery, they only have the Hop Splat gun, which I've never heard of, and a Squig catapult, which is interesting, because in the Codex they introduced all kinds of new artillery weapons for the orcs. But we'll get to that when I show you guys the Orc Codex in the future. For Eldar, we have 4 arc characters. Again, standard composition, much like the Imperial armies, and they can ally with Space Marines, Imperial Guard, or Squats. We've got Farseer, 0 to 1. Interesting, you can only have 0 to 1. Avatar, of course, the Avatar of Cain that we're used to seeing. Exarchs, again, like veteran sergeants and knobs and things like that, must be towards your character total, even though they are attached to your various aspect warrior squads. That's the word I was looking for. And then we've got warlocks, which are of course your lesser psychers. So you get your mastery level 1, 2, and 3, and then your farseer being the mastery level 4. So in your squads, you can have a max of 3 Harlequin troops. Cool. And then we've got all your standard aspect warriors we're used to seeing: Dire Avengers, Fire Dragons, Howling Banshees, Striking Scorpions, Swooping Hawks, and Dark Reapers. The Shining Spears were not in the game, if I recall, until 3rd. They were one of the units they introduced in 3rd. And that's it, I think. All the other aspect warriors are spoken for here. We've got Guardian squads, Guardian close combat squads, so what are nowadays known as Storm Guardians, and a Guardian battle squad. What is that? Shuriken catapults, las pistol, mesh armor, additional assault weapons, and special weapons. Interesting. One model may be equipped with a special weapon. So what's the difference between one model and your normal Guardian squads can be equipped with a special weapon too? 5 up armor save, 5 up armor save, Eldar Wargear List. Shuriken catapult, las pistol, mesh armor. Shuriken catapult, las gun. There you go. So your Guardian squads are armed with las guns. Your Guardian battle squads are armed with shuriken catapults. Huh. That's neat. That's a cool way to sort of differentiate, because I do remember seeing Eldar Guardians with las guns, the models that is, in Rogue Trader. And then your Eldar Scouts are what are now Rangers. Then you got your support weapons, support teams. Shuriken pistol, las pistol. Those will be your big boomy artillery weapons, and then your vehicles. So the Eldar Wargear list, again, we're looking at sort of your standard weapons, which obviously, you know, in Rogue Trader and in this edition, a lot of the races all used the same weapons for the most part. Of course, you've got race-specific ones thrown into the mix, but all the standards are always sort of your standard weapons across the board. So chainswords, power axes, power gloves, etc., etc. The only one they've added in here is the Harlequin Kiss and the Needle Pistol. It is possible that, and the Shuriken Pistol, of course, it is possible that the Imperium could use needle pistols as well back then, but they definitely couldn't use shuriken weapons, I don't think. Although I do remember in Rogue Trader seeing a model of a Space Marine holding a shuriken catapult, which was kind of cool. But again, Rogue Trader had more of a role-playing type thing to it, so I guess you could justify a Space Marine using a shuriken catapult, like he took it from a Guardian or, you know, traded it. But of course, in the current incarnation of Warhammer 40,000, Xenos tech is heresy, so you don't see that these days. Your support weapon platforms: heavy plasma guns, scatter laser, las cannons, and distortion cannon. Cool. I remember D cannons just being absolutely amazing in 2nd edition, because they like shook the ground all the way across and created a straight line, and everything in its path just got like friggin' decimated. And for your vehicles, we've just got a Dreadnought, a Jet Bike, and a Warwalker. So your Dreadnought is what is nowadays called the Wraithlord. It was an Eldar Dreadnought back then. Moving on to Chaos. Now we're getting into fun stuff. So, here you go. So they have demons as their own category. So you can have standard. You must have 25% squads. You can have up to half characters, up to half support, and up to half demons. And the only army that Chaos can ally with is orcs. Cool. So no Traitor Imperial Guard or anything at this point. However, we do have Cultist Covens and Demon Packs, as well as Chaos Hounds. That's pretty cool. Like I explained to you, when the 2nd edition Codex actually came out for Chaos, they actually divided it into 3 different army lists. You had your Chaos Space Marine army list, your Demon World army list, and like your Chaos Mortals, which were your Chaos Warriors, Beastman Packs, Chaos Hounds, more or less allowing you to bring your Warhammer Fantasy models into your Warhammer 40k army. In this book, of course, they're trying to keep things simplified. They just wanted to pump out rules for everything, and of course, so that means that we could literally have like a Beastman champion leading an army of Chaos Space Marines with Chaos Demons mixed into the mix, right? Which is pretty cool. So you didn't have to have a noise marine character in order to have noise marines. It doesn't specify that anywhere. Here, you could have any of these characters leading the army, with any of these units being the bulk of your troops. So much like Space Marines, I'm gonna get sidetracked here. We have your commander, your mighty hero, your champion, and then we've got a noise marine champion. It's interesting that they put them in a separate category, probably just because they have access to different war gear. So as you see here, he comes with a sonic blaster, which they've just qualified as counting as a storm bolter. That kind of sucks, but it is what it is. I guess in the actual Chaos Space Marine Codex, they expand the sonic weapons to actually have specific characteristics different from, but here they've just generalized it as a storm bolter. Again, this book was just meant to sort of hold you through until they came out with the codexes, much like the indexes do nowadays. And we've got a Chaos Magus, which is interesting. So looking at the characteristics line here, it looks like he is a human Magus, much like a Primaris Psyker, not a Chaos Space Marine Sorcerer, because I don't actually see... No, I don't see a Chaos Space Marine Sorcerer here. But hey, you got a Cult Coven Leader, that's cool, and a Beastman Champion, that's pretty cool too. So you could literally have a whole army of Chaos Cultists, which was neat, because I believe even in the Second Ed Codex, they actually allowed the cult armies to ally with Genestealer cult armies, and vice versa, which was cool. So you could actually have, like, the various subservient is not the word, submergent? Whatever. The rebellious cults allying together, things that are against the Imperium. Sorry about that, guys, a little brain fart. So in squads, we've got Chaos Terminator squads, much like your Loyal Marines. You have Space Marines and Terminators you could have as your whole army. We have Noise Marines, Cultists, Beastmen, Chaos Hounds, and then your Space Marine vehicles are going to be very similar to your Loyal Marine vehicles. And then for your demons, we've just got Khorne demons all listed together, Slaanesh demons all listed together, Nurgle demons all listed together, and their points values respectively. Wow, Bloodthirster was 275 points. Crazy. And of course, we've got 4 types of each. There's your Tzeentch demons. In order to change pink horrors, blue horrors, now they put 5 here because horrors, back then, a pink horror divided into 2 blue horrors. There was no brimstone horrors back then, so there wasn't a 3rd division, as I believe there is now in Age of Sigmar. And there you go, you got your Chaos War Gear list. Again, same basic stuff that every army has access to. I'm not seeing anything race specific. Crossbows, that's interesting, so that would be obviously on your cultists and on your beastmen. You're not going to be arming your Chaos Space Marines with crossbows, but that's neat. Multi-melt heavy plasma guns, heavy stubber, assault cannon, it's like, interesting. Assault cannon. So obviously they hadn't introduced the Reaper autocannon yet. Again, that may have been a Codex edition. Basically, you've just literally got Loyal Marine Terminators that have fallen to Chaos. And they're all equipped with targeters. Cool. Standard grenades, standard force weapons. Blood Slaughterer is in the vehicle list. Huh. I remember seeing a picture of the old Blood Slaughterer model, and it looked absolutely horrible. It was like on wheels and stuff, which is so weird. I didn't realize that they had actually brought it into 2nd edition. I thought it was a Rogue Trader thing that just died out. Of course, now we have Blood Slaughterers in the Forge World rules, and they are so cool looking. They're basically Mauler Fiends with spider legs, which is wicked cool. Back here, it was more or less just like the giant upper torso of a Khorne Berserker with like wheels. Really strange. But we also have, of course, the same access to the vehicles the Space Marines have. We have Chaos Dreadnoughts, Land Raiders, Predators, and Rhinos. And yeah, that's that. I actually don't see any support weapons listed, which is kind of weird. But I guess demons are sort of support. And I guess if you really wanted to, you could take not Imperial Guard, Orc allies. If you wanted some Grotman support weapons. So now we're going into the Tyranids, which they've obviously done a very short army list for them. I guess they don't have that many units in this edition until they actually expanded them into a codex. The Tyranids were kind of a new thing, I suppose, because we've got the Hive Tyrant, or the Tyrant Warriors, Tyranid Warriors, sorry, Termagants, Gene Stealers, and Carnifexes. So at least a quarter of your army had to be broods, and then you're having up to half of your army characters. No special rules for break tests and psychology apply to Tyranids. See Codex Imperialis. Interesting that they don't actually list details. I mean, don't actually list allies in this. Whereas the Gene Stealer cults can ally with Tyranids or Chaos, but not both at once. Again, like I was saying, you could ally your Gene Stealer cults with your Chaos cults. So that they do say in the Gene Stealer army list. But in the Tyranid army list, they don't. So I guess you would have to purchase a Gene Stealer core, Gene Stealer cult core, and then you could throw on Tyranid allies. But if you took a Tyranid core, you couldn't take any allies. Which is definitely an interesting way to compose things. And the Gene Stealer cult army looks like it's just a Patriarch, a Magus, and... oh, nope, we do have Gene Stealer broods, as well as hybrid broods, brood brothers being... so this would be your, what are nowadays, Neophyte hybrids and Acolyte hybrids. And your vehicles, we shall see what vehicles they have access to. So your Gene Stealer cult army list... again, standard weapons here, standard basic weapons, standard special weapons. Again, all the same heavy weapons, force weapons, vehicles. They have Bike, Land Raider, Leman Russ, Predator, Rhino, Sentinel. So all the same things that Imperial Guard have access to. Cool. So literally this is an Imperial Guard army with Gene Stealer flavor, which is what they are nowadays. And I am so happy they brought them back in 7th edition, because Gene Stealer cults were missing from the game for so long, and even in 6th I really wanted to convert a Gene Stealer cult army before they even came out with them. I was planning a whole thing where I could use them as some altered Imperial Guard models, or even as Tyranids, using the cultists as Termagants and stuff like that, rules-wise. But anyway, I get off topic. We're going to move on to the next book here in our 2nd edition series. I've got the Battle for Armageddon Scenarios. We're looking at the writers, of course, Andy Chambers once again, and Bill King is weighing in on this one, which is pretty neat. So Andy Chambers had a massive part of this edition. I didn't think he was a big part of this until 3rd, but apparently I was wrong, because him and Rick Priestley basically designed this 2nd edition is the way it looks to me, and these other guys just kind of jumped in. So here we're looking at fluff for the Armageddon, and here we go, we got Commissar Yarrick against, that is a really weird looking Stormboy backpack. Back then they actually had these 2 rockets on their back, the actual model. This thing is like a balloon with a jetpack attached to it. It looks kind of phallic, actually, which is really strange. And there's your original Gazkull. This weird little leopard squiggy guy. Coolness. Why he's just standing there while an Imperial tank sneaks up behind him, I'm not really sure, but it makes for wicked cool art. Thanks, John Blanche, for your awesome artwork in creating the beginnings of Warhammer 40,000. So we've got the introduction to the campaign system. Here we're looking at an actual continent rather than the entire planet as a whole, which is neat. So the orcs, I guess, start here and have spread out from there. And we're looking at all the different hive cities, because Armageddon being a hive world, at least it is in later editions. I'm not sure if they brought that into the fluff here. And once again, guys, I'm not going to read through the fluff for you. I would take way too long. Right now, we're just kind of taking a little trip down memory road by flipping through these books, and I'm just kind of showing you what was included in these tomes of ancient knowledge. So, briefing, forces, objectives. So explaining to you how the scenarios are going to work. and now we get into actual scenarios. So as you can see here, the edition being much more complicated, it's basically, you've got 2 pages here of how long this mission actually is. Yeah, 2 full pages pretty much, with a nice deployment map. And we're seeing these little L-shaped deals here. As I explained to you before, the starter set came with cardboard ruins, which we actually used for years. Me and my friends, we used them all the way up until 4th edition, when we actually started to get really good at making our own terrain and stuff. But before that, they gave you these little cardboard buildings. You know, all the sets actually, the Gorka Morka set, the Necromunda set, they all came with cardboard terrain. I guess cardboard cost nothing in the late 80s and early 90s. So here they're showing you what forces you're allowed to take. Gretchen, Gretchen, Gretchen. So it looks like it's Space Marines versus Gretchen. So I think here they're just really using the models that came in the starter set, because it gave you a crap load of Gretchen. It gave you, I think, 10 boys, and again a cardboard Orc Dreadnought, which is weird, and then a tactical squad of Space Marines. So you've basically got your Space Marines versus Gretchen in this scenario, it looks like. No orcs. Just trying to create it narratively. There doesn't seem to be much here in reference to how many points things cost. I think they're just teaching you how to play the game through using the models that are in the starter set, and there is the cover of the 2nd edition starter set. How cool is that? I love that picture even still to this day. Because literally that right there was my first introduction to Warhammer 40,000. And so for me, this picture represents my childhood. So cool. Just taking a minute to soak this in. Wow. And it really showed the scope of the battles. You got all these titans in the background and stuff, which were completely in the narrative. There was none of that in the game ever. Gargants. Cool. Moving on. So mission 2, we've got high ground. This time we're actually setting up orc mobs on the battlefield. That's cool. You see how your victory points are based on how much you've killed, rather than scoring objectives. Nowadays it seems like, of course there are kill points games, but the majority of missions use objectives in Warhammer 40,000. Deployment zone, game length, objectives, yeah. 3+ casualties, wiped out, Space Marine squad, 1 victory point. Yeah, okay. Orc player receives the following bonus victory points for killing a Space Marine with a missile launcher. Huh. So even for killing specific models. That's neat. And of course it's giving you special rules based on the scenario. How your boys have to operate. Blood Angels briefing, Orc briefing. You just neat how they laid it out that way, eh? And the things you really had to focus on. So now we're using an Orc Dreadnought, and the Space Marines have to take out said Dreadnought. Oh, okay. So actually we've got 3 units of 5 Space Marines here. 4 units of 5 Space Marines here. So I guess they did expect you to expand, because I don't think they gave you 20 Marines in the set. I think they only gave you 10. So that's weird. I guess this battle for Armageddon, I was under the impression it was in the 2nd edition starter set, but I may be wrong. It may have been in the expansion. If I am wrong, I'm sorry to include it in this video rather than the other, but that's okay, because really we're looking back on the past here. And these 2 books are so small, I felt that they should be included together in a video rather than separate. And I will show you the Dark Millennium expansion probably in the next video. Even though I told you I'd show you the War Gear cards in this video, guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to show it to you at the same time as the expansion, because a lot of those cards came in the starter set, yes, but they also came in the expansion set. So I want to kind of consolidate everything all at once before I start whipping out the codices. Okay, so Battle for the Bridge, cool. Tactics, game variants. That classic picture of the Emperor. So cool. With Space Marines surrounding him. Look how tiny he looks. Men united in the purpose of the Emperor are blessed in his sight and shall live forever in his memory. Oh, okay. I guess that's it. And here you go. One page at the back. We've just got putting all the scenarios together into a campaign, which is really neat. Cool. Awesome. Reinforcement table. That's neat. So when those guys die, you can't carry them in the next battle. You have to roll to see if extra things come in. There's things like battle wagons and stuff. So yes, I guess this is an expansion onto... it's 93. So I think it was included in the starter set. But I guess they are basically enticing you to expand on top of the starter set and build by future model kits. Anyway, that is the Battle for Armageddon Scenarios, as well as the Codex Army Lists for Warhammer 40,000 2nd Edition. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that blast from the past. I love taking a look at these old 2nd edition books because they bring me back to my childhood, because this is the era of Warhammer 40,000 that I first got into. So it's been really great taking a look at these. And we're pretty much through all of the beginner material, the starter set material for 2nd edition. The next bunch of stuff I'm going to show you guys, or at least I'm planning to show you guys, is the Dark Millennium expansion. As well, I will go through what I have. I'm pretty sure I have everything, but I'm not entirely sure. But I will go through what I have as far as the vehicle data faxes and the war gear cards, psychic cards, the psychic deck, and all that, as I was explaining to you the way the psychic phase used to work in the past videos. I will actually show you that deck and exactly what it meant, if you're interested. Which I hope you are, because this stuff to me is just absolutely amazing. It brings me back to my childhood and just makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. So I hope you guys are really enjoying this Relics of the Dark Age video. I know all you Classic Hammer fans are loving this stuff, and so thank you for all your likes, your comments, and all that. I will continue to pump these videos out, guys, because I have a massive collection, and I not only like showing it off, but I love looking at it. So if you guys love looking at this old stuff, please hit the subscribe button, and then you will know when these videos come out. Also, if you really like what we do here at Encounter Wargaming and you want to give back, you want to support us a little bit, we do have a Patreon campaign, so go to the description below and there's links there. You can also buy a t-shirt from our Spreadshirt page if you want. That'll also help us out a little bit. But the Patreon is a better option for you as far as bang for your buck, because for as little as $1 a month, if you really want to, but you know, preferably $1 a video, you get a whole bunch of extra video content. We give you behind the scenes content. Also, make sure to check us out on Twitch, guys. We're on Twitch now, so being a patron though will allow you to see our live Twitch broadcasts after they've gone live. So if you don't have the opportunity to catch one of our broadcasts live, it's okay, because if you're a patron you can watch it later. Otherwise, you gotta catch it live. But make sure to head over to our Twitch channel, click follow. At this particular point of the recording of this video, we haven't quite reached affiliate status yet, so you can't really subscribe, but hopefully you will be able to in the future. Meanwhile though, we would love it if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, we're all over that. And that's basically it for now. So we'll see you at our next encounter.
Like a monkey in a rocket on his way back home. Okay.